For those of you who are fans of Quentin Tarantino and have been following his career, he has said in interviews on talk shows and magazines and a lot of things similar to that, where he said that once he's made 10 films with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, his new film is his 9th film. So when he makes his 10th film, he's retiring. He's not going to make any more movies. He's going to write books or do whatever, just something, but he's not going to make any more movies. But whether he's going to do that or not is left up in the air. We don't know. And we don't know what his 10th movie is going to be. Be kind of interested to see what it is. Maybe it's going to be a horror film. I can't remember where I saw this, but I think he was being interviewed and he was talking about like if he was just going to do Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and then retire after that, like after its release. Like he looked at it, he said it was like an epilogue to his entire career. And if he was going to do a 10th film, that would be like a denouement or something like that. But if he was going to end his career on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he would be mad to do that. And that's not because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is like the film that changes the way we look at movies and is like the best film of all time. You'd be nuts to leave making movies after this like stellar piece of work. That's not it. I'm saying he'd be mad to end his career with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a very problematic movie. But let's put a hold on that. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. I don't know why it took so long for anyone to put these two actors in a movie. The chemistry is what really holds this movie together. Both their performances are great. I think it's one of Leonardo DiCaprio's best performances, and it's actually one of Brad Pitt's, like one of my favorite Brad Pitt performances. Like their chemistry is so good. Like you just really buy that friendship. Like they've been together for years. Like their banter with each other, their conversations, like there's real like friendship there, and that really felt believable. And it just putting those two, like, you know, we haven't seen these two actors in a movie before. And like, but once I heard that those two guys were going to be the leads of this film, I thought to myself, oh, that's perfect. They're such a good match. And they are a really good match. Like a lot of the comedy, a lot of the, you know, like a lot of the good bits of dialogue. There's not a lot of great dialogue in this movie, but a lot of the good bits of dialogue and the more, how should I say this, memorable moments of the movie come from their performances. And it's really, really, really good. And like the movie is catered to them. They are proper movie stars. The movie is completely, you know, it's made for them. It's their film. It's a buddy movie. Like this movie at the end of the day is a very long 2-hour, 45-minute buddy movie about an actor played, Leonardo DiCaprio plays an actor by the name of Rick Dalton, who has fallen on hard times and considers himself a has-been, and Cliff Booth, Brad Pitt's character, who's his stuntman. And they are, you know, they're in a Hollywood that is changing and they're falling behind and they don't know where to go. Like Rick Dalton was famous for a TV show called Bounty Law, which is Tarantino's way of tributing all the great Western TV shows of the 50s and 60s like Bonanza and Gunsmoke. And since Bounty Law finished, DiCaprio's career, Rick Dalton's career has, you know, it's like he's spent most of his time playing bad guys like the heavies in other TV shows or pilots and stuff. And his film career hasn't exactly gone well. I looked at him in the same way that I compared him a little bit to David Caruso, because David Caruso was really famous for a role on NYPD Blue. NYPD Blue, you know, made his career, and then he left, I think in the second season, to go and be a movie star. It didn't work out. And then he went back to TV and, you know, spent the last few years, you know, on CSI Miami. Like this is a really different Tarantino movie, and it's very quiet. Like there's a few moments of violence, like really bloody like violence, but it felt more matured. It was a bit more art housey. It felt like a different sort of Tarantino movie. Like all the long camera shots were there, and the fast paced editing, all that sort of stuff was was quite nice. Like Robert Richardson and him have a really really great partnership, and they started their collaboration when Robert Richardson did Kill Bill, and then he did Kill Bill 2, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight. And Robert Richardson is a great cinematographer, and the look of this film and the way that the camera moves is amazing. Like there's a lot of like moments, like a lot of the car sequences where like there's just all the driving shots where the camera's following the cars around, and it just gives a little bit of energy to the movie. And I think that's, he brought that, and I think that was really really good, because this movie, I'm kind of getting to the things about it which I didn't really like. I ultimately didn't find this movie to be satisfying. I left the theater feeling like I wasn't fulfilled enough. I felt like Tarantino missed the mark with this film, and I don't think this movie is up there with his best work. It's a far cry from his best work, and I didn't like hate the movie. I just felt a little disappointed with it. It was hard to connect with it. I think the writing was very not up to the standards of other Tarantino's writing. It just felt disconnected. There wasn't a cohesive narrative that really connected the entire film, and it was just short little all these little scenes that just were put together, and it just didn't have like a flowing, coherent narrative. And the movie doesn't really have that much of a plot. It has a lot of characters driving the movie, but there really isn't anything of substance to really attach yourself to the film. Margot Robbie, who plays Sharon Tate, who tragically was murdered by the members of Charles Manson's family. Margot Robbie plays Sharon Tate in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and there really isn't much use for her in the movie. Like, she's very wasted, and I didn't know what Tarantino was really doing with that character. We were just, with her, we were getting aspects of who she was through Margot Robbie's performance, and like this woman who was just, who sadly was taken away by some horrible people. And I struggled to really connect with that character, and I think that falls down to the characterization and the writing from Tarantino. And I don't know. It was a very strange film, and it just felt long. You didn't really know where it was building up to. There were some nice scenes, like there's a scene where Brad Pitt goes to the Spawn movie ranch. George Spawn had this, ranch where, all these Western TV shows were filmed, and in real life, the Manson family actually lived there and took advantage of him. Originally, Burt Reynolds was going to play George Spawn, but he sadly died before he could film any scenes for the movie. So the role was taken up by Bruce Dern, who has starred in a few of Tarantino's movies, Django Unchained and The Hateful Eight. Like, that scene was really well done. Like Dakota Fanning, who plays one of the members of the Manson family, she's really good. She's kind of creepy. I wanted to really see more of her. Like, it just brought like a very foreboding tone to the movie. It was kind of going somewhere. It just and then it just ended. It didn't really. It just kind of went and then it's done. Like, that's kind of like how I felt. I know I say kind of quite a lot, but I'm working on it. What really made me not enjoy this movie that much was the ending. The ending was a lot of things. It was unnecessarily comedic, unnecessarily violent, for one thing, and it just felt like a Hollywood male fantasy. I'm not going to spoil it for those who want to go see it, but that's what I felt about it. I felt very uneasy about it. And my brother, who I do a podcast with, Holmes Movies Podcast, which you can find on, little plug, Apple Podcasts and Spotify and SoundCloud, summed up that ending quite well. It's in really bad taste, and it distorts from a real tragedy. And that's where I felt that I think Tarantino messed up a little bit with this movie. I don't, I understand what he was trying to do. He was trying to make a movie that really tributed Hollywood of the golden age, Hollywood of the 60s. And I really wanted to see more of that. But it was like it was just bringing in all the Manson stuff and everything else. Like, he could have made a really interesting, thoughtful movie about, two guys in a time and place where they didn't really know where they wanted to go. And I really wanted to see more of that. I really wanted to see more of the behind the scenes aspects in these studio lots in the 1960s. And it just needed a little bit more substance. I just felt like this movie had a lot of style. It had a lot of signature Tarantino style, but it just lacked substance. And there was really nothing there that really made you want to connect with the movie or think that it was like his best movie since Pulp Fiction. And it's not. He hasn't, like, post like Jackie Brown and maybe Kill Bill, he hasn't made a film that has hit the level that his first three films have done. Have gotten to. If you want to listen to me and my brother talk about Quentin Tarantino and all of his movies from Reservoir Dogs up until The Hateful Eight, you can find the episode on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We go through his all his filmography, the films that he wrote and directed. I'm not saying Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is a bad film. Like, to quote a line from Chernobyl, not great, not terrible either. It's in between, but ultimately it felt unsatisfying and confusing about where it was supposed to go, and just felt very weak and bordering on self-indulgence. And I think that's very much something that I would use to describe Tarantino's recent films. And I want him to make that I really want him to make that film that it could be his 10th film where he goes out with a bang, and then it's like, yes, he finally made a film that reached the heights of Pulp Fiction and Jackie Brown, because I think he could do that. But it didn't really come across with this movie, and sadly I really didn't enjoy it as much as I thought I would. I went in with no expectations. I just went in thinking I didn't read any reviews. I didn't listen to anyone talk about it on YouTube or anything like that. I went in as blind as I could, and just pushing all that aside, informing my own opinion without hearing what people were saying. I knew that the film was getting a lot of acclaim. Like, all of his movies, there are people who like his movies, and people will like this film. I, for one, did not like it as much as I thought I would. I mean, I liked aspects of it. Like, the casting choices were great. DiCaprio, Brad Pitt were amazing. There were some really nice little bits of comedy, a little bit of bit too much in the end, which was unnecessary. And the technical aspects, like the camera, the costumes, the set designs, everything was really good. The way he transformed the Los Angeles, and takes it back to 1960s Los Angeles was amazing. There just needed to be a lot more. There just needed to be substance. There needed to be a bit more in the writing and in the narrative to make it interesting. And that's not really what it was. It was just watching a 2-hour, 45-minute movie where you just didn't really know where it was going. It was very tedious, and it was very drawn out and very scatterbrained and very disconnected. A lot of the scenes didn't connect, like I said. And it's a shame. It was a shame that all those feelings that I get from rewatching Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction and all those movies, including Death Proof. Death Proof has its good points. Like, a lot of aspects of those movies that I liked and everything, what I felt from them after watching them, really wasn't there in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And that is a shame. And yeah, I think that's pretty much all I have to say about the film. And, if he makes 10 movies, if he makes a 10th film, I just hope, like, he really just puts a lot of thought and care into this movie, and maybe doesn't, get so caught up in doing so many different things, because it's like, I think that's where the movies fall apart, particularly something like Django Unchained and Inglourious Bastards. Like, I think he just needs to be a bit more like, this is what it is. Like, that's my opinion, but maybe people will disagree with me. But, that's what I thought. What are you going to do?